one of the first things to make sure that it's understood is that this is a partnership between the city of Colby and Colby Investment Group. At the root of this project is star bonds, and we're going to talk about those in depth here in a few minutes. But star bonds technically have to be originated from a government entity, whether it's a city or a county. And generally, there's private development that's involved. But when this process is completed, it will actually be the city of Colby that will have issued the bonds themselves. But again, it's a partnership between the city and Colby Investment Group. Lee Liker and Ron Alexander, the mayor and the city manager, have been instrumental in this process up to this point in time. Without their support and help, and city council's help, we wouldn't be where we're at today. The other names that you see there, Mike Woofter, his nephew Jason, and his daughter Quinlan and Quade Woofter, are instrumental in this process. And then again, I work for Chance Management. Colby Investment Group, basically, if you think of the businesses that are right on Interstate 70 and south of Interstate 70, so city limits, the Comfort Inn, the Petro Travel Center, the Petro, and then Holiday Inn Express, Arby's, all of those are businesses that Mike is involved in, and so are his family. And it's those different businesses that are the owners of Colby Investment Group. Star bonds are a tool from the Department of Commerce that enable a community and private developers to create a tourism attraction. So by definition, in order to be eligible for star bonds, you have to be building something that by definition will bring people in from outside your community. And there's stipulations. A certain percentage of the people have to come from out of state. A certain percentage of the people have to come from more than 200 miles away from your community. And if you create a tourism attraction like this, and through the due diligence that the state provides, if it's determined that this project meets the basic criteria of bringing transient guests in from the outside, new to the community, then you're able to capture incremental or new sales tax that's generated by the attraction. So as an example, there's maybe you're familiar with Garden City and the big project on the east side of Garden City, where they've created a lot of retail outlets, some restaurants, there's a hotel, the water park, etc. They're also building a huge athletic complex that's got a variety of fields, whether it's indoor soccer and other type of athletic stuff. So the basis of that project in Garden City was these athletic fields that they believe are going to bring people in from the outside. And then there's other amenities around that project. So that met the requirements for star bonds. The state approved it through their process. The city of Garden City approved it through their process. And the project is now under construction. So we're proposing a similar type project that's based on a star bond district. At the heart of a star bond project is the actual district. And it's literally boundaries that encompass both vacant land and existing businesses. And it becomes the area where these sales tax, incremental sales tax, new extra sales tax will potentially be generated to help pay off the bonds for the project. So the map that you're looking at on your screen shows our district that has been approved by the city at this point in time, and it's also been approved in theory by the Department of Commerce. Now, we have a few more steps to go through before the city council creates an ordinance to establish the district. But as you're looking at it today, the red lines that incorporate the existing businesses south of Interstate 70, both sides of KS 25, and then north of Interstate 70, all the way up to the Dillons, that's the actual district. So when we talk in a few minutes about incremental sales tax dollars generated from transient guests, we're talking about the tax dollars that are generated within this boundary. Anything north of the boundary, further east of the boundary, obviously there's nothing west of it. But if it's not within this red outline, then it's not included in this process. The new elements that we're talking about creating are basically in the areas and or creating and or re-imaging, renovating are in these yellow boxes. So the large box that's on the west side of 25 and south of Interstate 70, that large box, in addition to the smaller box to the right of it that goes all the way to KS 25, that's where the indoor equestrian center that we're talking about is going to be built, and a substantial amount of the other infrastructure. The yellow boxes that you see on the right side of the screen, on the east side of 25 and south of the interstate, that shows the existing businesses where there are some new stuff being built. If you look at number 4 and number 5, that's where the 2 new hotels are under construction now, and they are part of this Starbond project. Now, they're already under construction, and we haven't completed this process. We made the commitment to build these 2 hotels regardless of whether or not the Starbond project is completed and approved. So those hotels are under construction. They're going to open in first quarter of 25. Obviously, we're hoping as developers that the Starbond project works and we're able to complete the rest of the stuff that we're going to talk about. But those hotels are under construction regardless. There's also some additional areas where stuff can be built in this area. The Starbond project is basically divided into 2 phases, phase 1 and phase 2. And we're going to talk about each of these individually as we move forward. But the center, the biggest deal is the multi-purpose arena and equestrian center. And I'm going to talk about that at length here in a minute. And then also what I'm going to call the accoutrements, if you will, I'm a restaurant guy, the accoutrements to the equestrian center, the amenities, the other things that will be built around it. New full service restaurants, 3 new hotels, 2 of those are under construction now and a 3rd is planned, re-imaging of our existing hotels, and then renovations at the travel center and the convention center. So those are the components that make up phase 1 of this project. The multi-purpose equestrian center, again, is at the heart of this project. This is going to be a massive facility, literally designed right now at 315,000 square feet under roof. There'll be 2 indoor arenas. There'll be a 400 stall facility to house horses, or can be converted to cattle and will hold 800 cattle. All of the amenities to be able to house any of the equestrian events, any of the rodeo events. Rodeo events range from barrel racing to bull riding to roping to cutting, sorting, those types of things. There's at least 8 or 9 different rodeo disciplines. And our objective is going to be create a facility with a 1,500 seating capacity in the main arena that will be able to house any of these events. So one weekend we could have a barrel racing. The following weekend it could be a sorting event. The following weekend it could be team roping. The following weekend it could be bull riding. And what I learned during this process, and maybe some of you are aware of this, I grew up in an environment where we went to the rodeo once a year, right? I grew up in the Denver metro area. We went to the National Stock Show every January. You'd go to the rodeo. The rodeo would last an hour and a half or 2 hours, and you'd see virtually all of the different disciplines in rodeo. But you'd only see, maybe 3 or 4, maybe a half a dozen contestants in each of the disciplines. Well, that happens, every weekend all throughout the country. But what also happens, which is even more significant, is each of these individual rodeo disciplines have their own organizations. And barrel racing, an example, they probably have, I don't know, a minimum of 200 or 250 events a year that are just barrel racing events. Some of these are single individual day. Some of them last 4 to 5, 6 days, some as many as 10 days. And these are events where all that they do is barrel racing. So our objective isn't to just be a facility where you can have a rodeo. Our objective is to create a facility where for 3 or 4 days, the first weekend of June, you can have a barrel racing event. Then you have a couple of days off, you do some cleaning, you do some converting, and now you've got 4 or 5 days of team roping. And again, if you create a facility that will be able to handle all of these events, you literally can have 60 or 70 events a year that are specifically rodeo type discipline events. So that's our objective, from bronc riding to barrel racing and everything in between. So that's the heart of the facility. We also intend to be able to house other events, right? So whether it's a cattle show, whether it's indoor shooting events, whether it's a swine or lamb or llama or chicken or a dog show, right? There's every weekend someplace, and even during the week, especially during the summer months, every weekend these types of activities that utilize the kind of facility that we're talking about building go on. And having the opportunity to be able to do it indoors is significant. So we're going to create a facility that can do, the mantra that we've created is anything that can be done under roof on dirt. That's our objective. We'll have the ability to do BMX racing. We'll be able to do monster truck shows. We'll be able to do barbecue shows or indoor flea markets, that type of thing. We're not going to have a basketball court or wrestling mats. That's not our objective. We got a beautiful facility in Colby to be able to take care of that type of stuff. And we're certainly not going to compete with the event center. Our objective is to be able to house events that are suited for dirt. Anything that can be done under a roof on dirt. So the first slide we showed, and I hope maybe you've seen, whether it was in the newspaper or social media, the objective is to not just have a 315,000 square foot facility, but we also want to create a wonderful environment around the Equestrian Center. Mike and I were traveling 2 weeks ago and we visited the Lazy E down in Guthrie, Oklahoma. What a beautiful facility. Well, one of the things that people do when they're there is they fish in the ponds. They've got beautiful fishing ponds around this facility. So our intent is to take this 75 acres that's on that west side of 25 south of I-70 and not just build a 315,000 square foot building, but we're going to create all the amenities around it to be able to give people additional opportunity while they're here. So we're going to have an RV park that has a minimum of 144, fully equipped slots with 50 amp hookups, water and sewer, to be able to take care of both of the equestrian folks, but also transient guests that are just traveling through and looking for a place to lay over one day. We know that Colby doesn't have enough restaurants. We learned this during the 1A basketball tournament and the 3-on-3 basketball tournament this summer. We learned that we are a great community and we have lots to offer, but we really don't have enough restaurants right now. We really don't have enough lodging. We really don't have enough stuff for other people to do. So when 1A basketball was here, and again, the community did a great job, but one of the things we heard from the participants was, okay, we played at noon on Friday, we won. We don't play again until 2 o'clock on Saturday. What is there for us to do between our games? What can we do in your community? So in the area of the Equestrian Center, we're going to build a food truck food court, right? On day one, we're going to have the ability for 10 food trucks to be able to park and hook up to electricity so they don't have to run their generators. So when we do have events at the very beginning of this, before additional restaurants are built in our community, we're going to be able to take care of the folks from a food standpoint. We're going to have picnic areas. We're going to have an area where we can have an amphitheater and some type of music and other types of things. We're going to have a fishing pond. We're going to have green belt and walking trails, RV park again. All of those things are going to be built around the Equestrian Center to both take care of the guests that come for an event at the Equestrian Center, but also to add additional stuff for our community, for folks that live in Northwest Kansas to participate in. Also in phase one is the new hotels. So I'm sure if you've traveled Interstate 70, you've seen the two new hotels under construction. The one that's an east-west orientation that's right on the interstate, that's going to be the Comfort Inn that you see in the upper left. The one that has a north-south orientation that basically is in between the convention center and the John Deere dealership is going to be the new Holiday Inn Express. Both of those hotels will be open early next year. I would guess the Comfort Inn will be open in January, and Holiday Inn should be open no later than April of next year. So we're adding, between those two hotels, we're adding 173 rooms to the inventory. Both of them are 4-story hotels. They're going to be beautiful facilities. Well, as part of that, then we're going to rebrand our existing hotels. So the current Comfort Inn is going to be, or excuse me, the current Comfort Inn becomes a Quality Inn, and the current Holiday Inn Express will be rebranded as a La Quinta. So we'll have 173 new rooms and a upper end Wyndham property. Wyndham is the organization that owns La Quinta. So we'll have a Wyndham property that's more of the mid-scale or upper end versus some of their other properties. The fifth hotel, the third new hotel, we're still working on securing a new deal, but we're looking at it as being something even further upper scale. So whether it's a Courtyard by Marriott, whether it's a Hilton Garden, that's the type of property that we're looking at for the third hotel that'll be closer to the Equestrian Center. And part of that will include additional food service because those properties have bars and restaurants in them. Included in this is renovations. So I'll start at the travel center. About 6 years ago, we started the project of increasing the restrooms. And if you've been to the travel center prior to the new restrooms and after, you know what a nice change that was. I can remember, 7-8 years ago on a holiday weekend or a weekend in the summer when there literally would be lines of people waiting to get to the restrooms. So the first thing that we did several years ago was complete the restrooms. But the other thing that we need to do is increase our ability to fuel vehicles and to get it done quicker. So currently at the truck stop, we've got 6 dispensers, so we can fuel 12 vehicles at a time. As part of our renovation, we're adding 6 new high-speed pumps, and we're going to be able to then fuel 24 vehicles at a time. So being able to take care of fueling quicker and having more restrooms means that people are going to have more time and are more apt to stop here because of the way we're able to take care of them. In addition, the Starbucks will have a new drive-through, and we're going to re-engineer our kitchen create a new kitchen in the convenience store to be able to do more grab and go. If you think a Quick Trip is a really good example, they do a great job of made to fresh items. You order through a kiosk, they're made fresh for you. So as part of our renovations at the travel center, we're going to be building a kitchen and adding the kiosks to improve the grab and go, the food offering. As far as the city limits goes, if you've ever been to a banquet at city limits where there's 300 or 400 people, you know how tough the parking is. And if you've ever been to a banquet at city limits when there's 300 or 400 people, you know that the restaurant is dead. There's nobody in the restaurant because anybody that doesn't know or understand the convention center and the restaurant side by side looks at the parking lot and says that, oh, the restaurant's too busy, I'm not going in there. So as part of this process, We are going to improve the parking, and we're also going to change the entrance for the convention center. Currently, you enter basically the door that's on the far east side, and it takes you either to the restaurant or it takes you to the convention center. It can also take you to the end of the hall of the hotel. Well, if you basically just think of opposite end of that, where the convention center is, maybe where the big flag is out in that open grass area, if you can picture that, we're going to take that area and create a new entrance to the convention center, increase the parking on that south side of the building, and we're also going to have additional parking on the east side of the parking between the new hotels and between the convention center. So by definition, there'll be an entrance for the convention center, there'll be an entrance for the restaurant, there'll be parking for both, and you won't have the conflict that exists today. We're also going to increase some of our capacity in the two restaurant kitchens. We're adding more storage for food, freezer and cooler storage, and we're going to connect the two kitchens. Currently, the two kitchens aren't connected, and if you want to go from one kitchen to the other, you literally have to go through the banquet facilities or you have to go outside. So we're going to re-engineer the kitchens, and we're doing it for a huge reason. With two new hotels in the parking lot, 173 additional guests, and the creation of the stuff on the west side of 25, or the Equestrian Center and some of the other stuff, both of these facilities are going to see increased usage. And frankly, right now, we're pretty much maxed, especially with our storage, to be able to take care of the guests we have. So the intent in this process is to do renovations in those to be able to better take care of our existing clientele, but also the new guests that will be coming as a result of the project. So that's basically phase one. Phase two includes indoor amusement center, go-karts, putt-putt, laser tag, arcade, etc., the petting zoo, wind, weather, and tornado exhibit, farming pavilion and ag center, and then additional retail and restaurant pad sites. So there's been some artist renderings that have been displayed that you might have seen. We have them on this program, and we've had conversations and we've got layouts. Phase two is still in development, and right now we've kind of evolved to where we're likely looking at incorporating the indoor amusement, the wind, weather, and tornado exhibit, and the farming pavilion into literally one large facility, probably 60 to 70,000 square feet. And there's a variety of reasons that we're looking at doing that. One of them is for ease for our clientele, our guests. If we were to create three separate facilities, we'd really need, 3 different gift shops. We'd need 3 different restaurants. We'd need 3 different restrooms, etc. So we're working with some engineers and architects now to create a large facility that will incorporate these different components and really create a destination location, not just for the folks that are coming for the Equestrian Center that are here for 3 or 4 days, but really a destination location for people in Northwest Kansas, for our communities, somebody from St. Francis or somebody from Scott City to be able to come up and bring their family and friends to see and do. Let alone the folks in Thomas County, Logan County, Sherman, the ones that are closest to us. So the intent is to create additional stuff for people to do while they're here. And we really have 3 sources of potential guests. The first one we talked about is folks that are coming here, the transient guests that are coming here to participate in some type of event at the Equestrian Center. Second one we talked about as well, and that's the local people, right? Folks that are within 150 mile radius of Thomas County and Colby. This is going to be a destination spot for them to come. They may not spend the night. They may spend the night. They may come, if you think about February or March or January, some of the winter months where it's tough to find stuff to do. This is going to be a good draw for people from Garden City or Scott City or Hayes, etc. Folks that are 100 miles away. This will be a good draw and an opportunity for them to experience some new stuff. But the third potential is the transient guests that we already have coming up and down Interstate 70. I'm not sure if you're all familiar with the terminology called pull factor, but pull factor is a financial tool, if you will, or study or key indicator that the state utilizes to determine out of the sales tax that are created in a county, how much of that is coming from outside the county? How much is coming from other areas? Well, Thomas County historically ranks in the top three. We've been number one and we've been number two. I think currently we're number two. And we're competing with communities that are huge, right? The reason Thomas County ranks so high in pull factor is because a large amount of the retail sales tax that's collected in Thomas County comes from the transient guests along Interstate 70. So what we're trying to do is create additional reasons for those people to stop and stay, right? I've been in the travel center business since 1997, and I know the impact that transient guests can have on different communities. So our objective is to capture the folks that are going from Kansas City or St. Louis to the mountain states, right? Every summer we see it. It starts, spring break time, certainly after Memorial Day, and it lasts all the way after Labor Day, right? We see the guests that are going to and from the mountain states along Interstate 70. And these folks stage along the way, right? If you leave St. Louis, you're not going to make it to Denver into the mountains in one day. So you stage someplace. I had truck stops in Lyman, Colorado for years, and I could never understand why Lyman, Colorado was so busy. It's not the nicest town, and I hope I don't offend anybody, but Lyman is a tough town, especially if you're in business there. I never could understand why folks would stay there to or from Colorado. And then it dawned on me, they may only be 90 minutes from Denver, but these folks aren't stopping in Denver. They're going on to Grand Junction. They're going on to Glenwood Springs. They're going on to Aspen. So they stage in Lyman. So our objective is to create Colby as a staging location for people that are traveling Interstate 70. We're already successful. If we're number 2 or 1 in pull factor in the state of Kansas, that's a heck of a statistic for Colby and for Thomas County. We want to increase that. We want to bring in more money from the outside. These types of things will not only support the Equestrian Center and not only provide additional opportunity for the folks that live in this community, but it's going to be another reason for people to stop and stay in Colby. And if they stay an extra night, we're going to make a lot more money. Indoor amusement, again, putt-putt, indoor go-karts, etc. Wind, weather, and tornado exhibit. If you look at the lower left, that's a slide from the Museum of Science and Industry in Chicago. I took Mike Wolfter to Chicago a few years ago to the National Restaurant Show. And while we were there, we went to the Museum of Science and Industry. And they have a tornado machine there that is amazing. So our idea for this wind, weather, and tornado exhibit is not to create another Wizard of Oz, tourist spot. Our idea is to create an interactive educational facility where people can learn about not just weather, but the weather that impacts Northwest Kansas, the weather that we live with every day. I've been here 16 years. My wife and I moved here in 2008 from Colorado. I never followed weather for the first 48 years of my life. I never followed weather the way I do now. I live out in the country, whether it's the potential for tornado, whether it's we haven't had enough rain, whether it's the wind that we experienced this afternoon. Weather is a fact of life. And so we want to create an interactive educational opportunity that centers around the weather that we live in. And on the same note, this is our life, right? This is our community, and ag is a huge component of it. Whether it's farming or whether it's ranching, the intent is again to create an educational interactive. We're not trying to build a new museum. And so if you ever hear the word museum in connection with our project, correct people or pull that word out of your mouth. We're not a museum. We've got a wonderful museum in Thomas County. Our intent is to create more interactive opportunity for transient guests that are passing through. Stuff that's educational, stuff that's fun to do, stuff that's hands-on, etc. But we're not building a museum. This slide shows you, and again, this is just a preliminary sketch, but what I want to encourage you to think about is all of the open areas that are in the stuff that we're developing. We're going to build a 5th hotel that'll most likely be, closer to the Equestrian Center. But we have the ability to create, tens of thousands of square feet of additional retail and restaurant pad sites. And as part of this project, we're going to do that because our intent, we're the developers, but our hopes, our objective is that through this development, we're going to bring in more new businesses from the outside and perhaps additional opportunities for businesses that are already here. Vanderbilt's is a great facility, right? Wonderful little store. But if you go to Colby, or excuse me, if you go to Hayes, Vanderbilt's is a lot bigger in some of those communities. So I think it would be wonderful. That the manager of Vanderbilt's told Mike Wolfter one day that the staff can have Christmas off, they can have Easter off, they can have Thanksgiving, but the one weekend they can't have off is when college rodeo is here. Nobody on their staff can have the weekend off when college rodeo is here. Well, I'd like to believe that what we're creating is college rodeo, 15 or 20 times a year, right? That type of activity. So I would love it if Vanderbilt said, gosh, this facility is not big enough and we need to move into a bigger facility because we're going to be so successful and we've got such an opportunity to grow. It'd be wonderful if Vanderbilt's wanted to take a bigger slot over here. So at the end of the day, our objective is to bring in additional businesses to participate in this development and bring more food, more retail, and perhaps more opportunity for recreation. And we're building plenty of stuff, plenty of pad sites to be able to accomplish that. All right, here's the meat of this deal. Project cost, estimates, etc. We know that to do what we want to do is going to cost us about $90 million minimum. And we're looking at both private development paying for this, but we're also looking at the different programs that are established through our Department of Commerce that are designed to promote improving and increasing commerce in our area. I was at a recent county meeting, and they were struggling with the fact that our county has to potentially close the landfill on Sundays at least half the time. And part of the problem is expenses, right? We all know the costs are increasing. So if you're an entity, a government entity, you have only a few options, right? As your costs increase, your options are cut services, right? Close down the city dump or the county dump on Sundays half the time, half the year, or increase taxes to be able to pay for the increased stuff. Well, our deal is there's a third opportunity, and that's to increase the tax base, right? We don't want to see our community have to reduce services, and we all don't want to see our community have to increase our taxes, right? Our property taxes. So what can we do as a community to increase the tax base? What can we do to bring in more people? What can we do to bring in additional tax dollars from the transient guests and more money from the outside? What can we do to increase the tax base? And Department of Commerce, Department of Revenue believe in those types of strategies. And that's why these programs exist. So the star bond is the base of this. And in that red outline that we saw earlier, if this process is successful, we will know what the tax base was for a 12-month look back. And for argument's sake, let's just say that was $1 million. Let's say that inside the red box on the 12-month look back, the tax base was $1 million. Moving forward, as taxes in the red box are collected, as the state sales tax in the red box are collected, we have the opportunity to capture the incremental, the stuff above $1 million in terms of the star bond. Transient guest tax is the bed tax that's collected at the hotels. IRBs, TIF, CID, those are other tools, and I'll answer those specifically as we get to them. But these are the tools that the Department of Commerce has created to help businesses create stuff that builds the tax base. So I talked about the 12-month look back. Currently, the sales tax is 6.5%. So if you go into Starbucks today and you buy a latte, you're going to pay 6.5% sales tax. You're also going to pay 1.75 county sales tax, and you're going to pay 0.75 city sales tax. Under the plan that we're creating, if it's approved, out of that 6.5% sales tax that's collected from the state level, we're going to get to keep 5.85% of that on the incremental taxes that are collected. So if that 12-month look back is $1 million, every dollar of sales tax that's collected on that, we get to keep at the 5.85. The state's still going to keep 0.65. The county sales tax, we don't touch. But the county currently gives the city 0.82, and we're going to be able to retain that to help pay off the bonds. The 0.75 from the city, we're not going to touch. So to pay off the star bonds, we're looking at utilizing about 90% of the payoff is going to come from the state. If you think about that, the meat of this is coming from the state. The state's going to give up the bulk of their incremental sales tax above that 12-month look back. The state's going to give that up. The city's given a little bit that the county collects. And then the other component of that is the transient guest tax. So when somebody stays in our hotels, currently they pay a 6.5% transient guest tax. That's a bed tax. That's above and beyond the sales tax. So same concept, we'll do a 12-month look back at the hotels, and whatever that dollar amount is, that will retain for the CVB to utilize, but then we'll get 95% of that, above that, to be able to help pay off the bonds. So if you look at the last words on the screen, after payoff, star bonds and this process are designed to be no more than 20 years. So from the time this starts, we have 20 years for this process. And if you pay off early, obviously then that sales tax goes to where it's supposed to go. Goes to the city. The county's portion will go to the city, or the state sales tax goes back to the state. The county goes to the portion goes to the city. So then everybody increases their taxes collected after the payoff. An important part about star bonds that I didn't say earlier, I apologize. These are not general obligation bonds. These are not general obligation bonds. And what that means is the only risk is to the bond buyer. Developers, city, state, there's no risk. If at the end of 20 years, the bonds aren't paid off, it's the bondholder that loses out. So other than the city giving up a little bit of incremental sales tax, that, by the way, wouldn't be created if it weren't for the project, right? The reason that we utilize the incremental or new sales tax is because the idea is the project is what's creating that. If we don't build this, we don't have the opportunity to bring 100,000 people here each year. And that's what the preliminary feasibility study talked about, was somewhere around 100,000 people will visit our community by year 3 or 4 as a result of what we're building. Now, the state is now conducting a formal feasibility study, and clearly our hopes are that those numbers come back the same as the preliminary feasibility study did, maybe even better. But ultimately, the idea is that we use these incremental or new sales tax above the base to help pay off some of the project, potentially 50% of the project. Private development is the other 50%. It's private developers' money. But if this projects get paid off in 6, 7, 8 years, then the significant impact on the county and on the state from the transient guest tax and sales tax that's collected is significant. So that's the premise of this whole idea, is what can we do to create something that brings people in from the outside and gets them to spend money in our community. So I had a list of questions that Connie sent, and Connie, if you don't mind, I did pretty good at 7:49. I'm going to go through your questions, and then maybe that'll help, and then we'll open it up to others. Connie asked, has this been approved? No, it's not approved yet. We're absolutely still early in the stages. Each day we get further, and the fact that the city's on board now, that we have an approved district, that the Department of Commerce has said, yes, keep moving. The fact that we're now going through the formal feasibility study, it's highly likely that by, my guess would be February or March of next year, we'll know if this is going to happen. We'll know if it's a go. We'll have the approval from the Department of Commerce. The city will have completed their process, the legal process that they have to go through, and we'll be ready to sell bonds. That's our objective. But we still have numerous steps to go through, and part of it is communicating everything what's going on. Great question about employees. You know, we're expecting about 125 employees are going to be needed for this project. And where the heck are they going to come from? Well, I would tell you that our first objective and our first priority is to fix the housing problem in our community. We don't have enough housing. We don't have enough housing for all levels, whether it's low income housing or above. We don't have enough housing. But we've created, and we're doing a heck of a job. We started this process 2 or 3 years ago, and we're doing pretty good. We've got 9 duplexes that are under construction now that's going to add 18 different units. We personally worked with a development company out in Nebraska, and those are being constructed over by the just on the west side of Walmart. If you've not heard, it looks like there's going to be potentially 40 units built at the old community building by the post office. We've got numerous other sites, higher end housing that's either being completed now or in the process over near the college. So Colby and Thomas County is ahead of the curve in fixing our housing problem. But I promise you, every community in Kansas and every community in virtually every state is going through the same thing. And my contention is, if we fix the housing problem first, we're going to get new people coming in that can't go to Lyman, Colorado, right? If we fix our housing problem before Lyman does, somebody that's looking to move to a new rural area is going to come to Colby or Thomas County or any of our other surrounding cities, towns, before they would go to Lyman. So we got to fix the housing first. Second thing is, we're going to do a regional and national recruitment. We've probably got a dozen positions that we're going to have to recruit for. And these are going to be high paid salary positions, running this equestrian center, running our new hotels, new full service restaurant, et cetera. These are positions that we're going to have to recruit from the outside. Part of recruiting people is to be able to house them. Part of recruiting people is to have other stuff going on in your community that makes your community look attractive. We're building a beautiful new hospital. That hospital is going to help benefit the entry-level workforce. They tell me that there's probably about 30 new employees for the hospital. Well, those are folks that are going to come from the outside that bring, spouses, children, et cetera, with them, entry-level work people. So as our community grows in other ways, we're gonna help build our workforce. I firmly believe, I moved here 16 years ago. We left Denver metro area to live more of a rural lifestyle. I think you're going to see that increase. It's tougher in cities now. And again, if there is a rural desire, if people are going to leave cities to go more rural, if we're ahead of the curve, if we've got housing under development, if we've got new recreational opportunities, if we've got a beautiful new hospital, that makes Colby more attractive and Thomas County more attractive, Northwest Kansas more attractive. I might be naive, and we live in a troubled time, and we have more disparity and more dysfunction right now than ever before, in my lifetime anywhere. But I have to believe that in the next few years that we're going to see our country pull together. And I believe there'll be some type of reform at the national level that's going to help us with vetted, qualified people to work in our country. I'm not advocating anything, and this isn't a political conversation, but I believe that our government's going to fix our problem, and that we're going to have the opportunity to have additional workforce in our areas if we're ready for it, right? Somebody talked earlier about the schools. I think this will have a potential, positive impact on schools. It not only increases the potential funding, but there will be more students. And I think it's a great opportunity. Childcare, that was another question. Again, maybe I'm naive, but as we build the hospital, as we build 2 new hotels, if this project gets improved, there's an enterprising person in our community, an entrepreneur. There's going to be somebody that's going to see an opportunity to create a child care facility that's going to be smart enough to go through the state and work with the state to find out what type of funding is available, what resources are there, whether it, some of the other, Hanson Foundation, et cetera. There's a lot of ways that an enterprising entrepreneurial person could leverage the growth in our community and create a facility that not only would support our community, but would benefit them as well. It would be a business that they could start and have and own. And that's what we're all about, right? I believe that'll happen. There's somebody in our community that's going to do that. One of the questions Connie said was regional impact. How is this going to help all of Northwest Kansas? Well, one of the reasons that Colby is such an ideal place for this facility, this equestrian center, is because the Interstate 70 corridor and US 83. We're in a great location to get to easily from the rodeo world, right? Folks that come from the Dakotas, folks that come from Colorado or the other mountain states, folks that come from Oklahoma, Texas, et cetera. We're easy to get to. We have great interstates to get you here, or US highways to get you here. But guess what? All those folks have to come through Atwood or Hayes or Scott City or Goodland. They've got to come through the other Northwest Kansas communities to get here. And those businesses are going to benefit absolutely with increased traffic. Other retail and restaurant opportunities, right? We went to Hoxie a couple of weeks ago for dinner. More restaurants here not only creates an opportunity for the folks that are here from a transient standpoint, but it also attracts people from outside of our community and gives them an opportunity to come to Colby for more stuff. And by the way, people don't have to live in Colby to work at some of our stuff. I live by campus, so I live east of Oakley out in the country, but I work in Colby. So as we talk about 125 people, I absolutely believe some of those folks will live in Atwood, some of those folks will live in Gem, some of those folks will live in Monument, or any of those other communities that are fairly close to us from a getting to and from work standpoint. CID, we talked about that earlier. CID is basically, the acronym is Community Improvement District. So it's another opportunity or another way for private business to create development and create new tax dollars for the community. Basically, a CID is another district, and the only thing that'll be in our CI district is the new stuff that we're creating or renovating. It won't be the red outline. It'll be much smaller. It'll include everything in phase 1 or phase 2, but it allows us as business owners to put up to 2% additional sales tax on a transaction. So these transient guests that are coming to our facility pay an extra 2% when they buy a latte at Starbucks. And that helps pay off the loans, the bonds. That right now, 24/7, if you weren't aware, when Mark Augustine in 24/7 reimaged that facility, or did a raise and rebuild, there is a CID on McDonald's and 24/7, and that's one of the ways that they use to help pay for their facility. We talked about transient guest tax, the bed tax earlier. Connie wanted to know preliminary estimates on revenue. We're estimating somewhere between $18 and $20 million a year in sales. And I thought this was a wonderful question. How does that impact the community? How many times does it get turned over? I'm an old fry cook, right? I'm a restaurant guy. I'm a hospitality guy. But I've been in business for a long time, and I've heard this many, many different areas. New dollars that come into your community typically get turned over 6 to 7 times. So somebody that visits our community and goes out to dinner and spends $100, that $100 will get spent 6 to 7 more times, whether it's the owners of the restaurant, whether it's the server that got tipped, whether it gets spent 6 to 7 times in your community. So if we have $18 to $20 million come into our community from the outside, and that gets, let's be conservative. Let's say it only gets spent 5 times. That's $100 million that's going to go through different businesses in our community. Wonderful opportunity. The last question Connie had was time frame. I already shared with you that the 2 hotels are going to be open in first quarter, January and probably April. We're not going to start building the Equestrian Center until we're done, right? Until we sell bonds. But if everything is approved, and again, we continue to move through the process, if everything is approved, once bonds are sold, we believe that the Equestrian Center can be open in 18 months. 18 months from the time we start construction. That includes the RV park, that includes the food truck, food court. We maybe won't have the beautiful grass and the lake established yet, but 18 months, give or take, the Equestrian Center will be open, and the other retail pad sites will be available. Do I believe that all of this other retail stuff will happen in that time frame? No. I think phase 2, our 60, 70,000 square foot indoor amusement area with the different educational components, probably another year behind that. But all of the materials that we've created, the pro formas for our businesses, the stuff that they're now utilizing to do the formal feasibility study, all of that has us at peak about 4 years from the time this process starts. And I would encourage you to look at the Department of Commerce website to be able to see that little video about Star Bonds. Yeah, and you may be aware that the secretary of the Department of Commerce is also the lieutenant governor, and
Right.
and we've had several meetings with David, and he's adamant about getting a project in rural western Kansas. It doesn't mean that our deal is done, because it has to pass the muster, right? The formal feasibility studies has to come back positive, and we have to be able to sell bonds. But the lieutenant governor is very, very bullish on getting a program in Western Kansas, because he's painfully aware of the fact that the majority of the stuff is in Eastern Kansas, and he would love to see rural Kansas, especially Western Kansas, benefit. So we appreciate that.
Well, thank you very much. I think this will be good for young people growing up here. If they don't think that there's much for agriculture for them, or maybe if the water is a problem, or we need to go into something else. And I think this is a good thing. Thanks everybody for coming.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.